Now, the reason that I am not wearing a mask at this stage of the proceedings is because I've got quite a few words to say. It's been some time since we had an anonymity order, so let me just remind you of the terms of it and what people must not do. And at the same time, remind you, please, particularly in this week of all weeks, do not take a photograph, even if you think it's of your friends whom you've known perhaps from childhood or schoolhood, because, or if you do, be very, very careful about who's in the background, because you mustn't take a photograph around here without checking with anyone that they are happy to be in the photograph. We do take the privacy of those who wish it very keenly indeed. And for that purpose, I make this particular restriction order in respect of Mr. B.A. So the order that I'm making in his case is that the name and address of witness 3130 and any other identifying information such as his image or a description of their appearance, his appearance, cannot be disclosed or published in any form unless express permission is given by me or by the solicitor to the inquiry acting on my behalf. Witness 3130 must be referred to only as Mr. B.A. The order remains in force for the duration of the inquiry and at all times thereafter, unless otherwise ordered, and I may vary or revoke the order by making a further order during the course of the inquiry. But without that further order, if there is to be one, no one must break that order, and if they do so, they are committing an offence. Well, with that introduction, Mr. B.A., Mary, would you please?
Mr. B.A., your full name is known to the inquiry. Could you please repeat after me? I do solemnly, sincerely.
I do solemnly, sincerely.
And truly declare and affirm.
And truly declare and affirm.
That the evidence I shall give.
That the evidence I shall give.
Shall be the truth.
Shall be the truth.
The whole truth.
The whole truth.
And nothing but the truth.
And nothing but the truth.
Yes.
Mr. B.A., you have severe haemophilia A.
Yes.
And you were diagnosed as a baby at about 1, is that right?
That's right, yes.
That was a surprise to the family, wasn't it?
Yes, yes, my leg just swelled up for no apparent reason, and my parents took me to the GP, and he rightly conjectured, that this boy probably has haemophilia. And yes, that was the diagnosis following testing.
And there'd been no haemophilia in the family?
No, there's nobody else that we know of.
You were treated at another centre, obviously, when you were young, before you went to Treloar's. Do you know what treatment you received there? Yes,
well, in the earliest times, there was no treatment. So I think I had a very small cut on my head once when I was about 2, and that just continued to bleed. The hospital could just give me whole blood. That was how it was at first, but then when I was around about the age of 5, I went on to cryoprecipitate.
You went to Treloar's in 1975.
Yes.
Can you tell us how you came to go to Treloar's?
Well, I went there because I had been at another special school, a Dr. Bernardo's school. My parents were concerned that there were no O-levels. I wasn't going to be able to do any exams or gain any qualifications there, so they wanted me to go to a proper secondary school where, I could get exams. And they looked around the local schools, but they all said no. That boy cannot come to us with haemophilia. They didn't want me there. So my parents got me to Treloar, which they seemed, they were very pleased about. They thought that, yes, I would get exams and good treatment, so they wouldn't have to worry.
And when you first arrived in Treloar, can you tell us a little bit of what your sort of first impressions were of the place?
Well, it was a sort of, an amazing experience, I suppose, for the first few days, because I'd never met anyone else with haemophilia, and suddenly there were about 40 people or so, all with the same thing. So it seemed sort of weird and exciting, I suppose, at that time.
And then as you went through Treloar, in terms of the educational experience and the ability to socialise with other students, what was your experience?
Well, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed that. I think. I think we had a reasonable education, maybe a little old-fashioned here and there, perhaps, but it seemed good, rigorous, I suppose, and it was fun mixing with the other kids and hearing different accents and trying to imitate other accents, and it was fun. That was a fun time, I think.
In terms of receiving treatment at Treloar, when you were first there, where do you recall receiving your treatment?
Well, first, and I had to go for treatment at day one because I had a bleeding tooth socket. Was down at the hospital in Oldham. So that was, I went there for treatment after first seeing, a doctor at the school in sick bay.
So you attended sick bay?
Yeah, I think you had to go and report, a bleed. And then you would go down, be taken down to the hospital in a van.
Do you ever recall at that time when the hospital wasn't on site, receiving cryoprecipitate or anything at the sick bay?
When the treatment centre wasn't in the school, that's very difficult to say. In the early days, I just remember getting treatment in the hospital. You'd have to go there and get treatment. I can remember the treatment room when we moved to what had been Florence Treloar School. I remember that clearly, but I don't remember where we used to get the treatment in Froyle. So that's strange. I think we must have received treatment in the school, especially when concentrate came in, because it must have been easier to store, easier to administer. But I'm sorry, I can't be clearer.
Don't worry. And in terms of your memories of the treatment room, once the centre was on site, what can you tell us about how that was set up? What was it like?
Well, in Hollybourne, the treatment had like school desks, and you'd get the bottles and put them on the desk, and then swab the tops, flip off the caps, wasn't it, and then draw up the treatment, and there you are, and then wipe the desk down with alcohol. So I remember that. And you do, that's what I remember. After that was when, after you've been trained to do your own treatment. Prior to that, it was done for you by a nurse.
And you were trained to give yourself the treatment from about the age of 15.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And once you were giving yourself the treatment,
yeah.
Do you recall whether you went and got the concentrate yourself, or whether someone handed you the concentrate that you were to use?
Oh, it was handed to me. I'm pretty sure. I don't think we went to the fridge and got it out. I think it was given to you, and then you administered it yourself.
And in terms of the treatment you received, you've said that at your home centre you received cryoprecipitate.
I did, up till 75, and that was when in that year that is when I first received concentrate in Alton Hospital. So I looked through my own notes and I remembered it was 75 first term, but I think the specific date was the 14th of October 75, and according to the record I had Lister, which by that they mean British product made by BPL Bioproducts Laboratory, I believe, and the second dose was cryobulin in the 24th of October, I think.
We're going to pick up some of your treatment records in a moment, but before we do that, when you changed over to factor concentrate, when you were given them for the first time at Treloar, from discussions with your parents, are you aware at all of whether they were given any information about factor concentrates?
I don't believe so. No, that detail probably didn't come up with them, didn't concern them. They weren't told that kind of thing. I don't believe.
Were you spoken to at all about the fact that you were changing to factor concentrates?
No, they just said, here's a new treatment. Concentrate. It's amazing. And it was, it just took 10 minutes instead of about 3 hours. So it seems pretty good. I had heard of this concentrate before because it had been mentioned on the news, local news in the west of England, maybe early 75, and I was thinking, that sounds good. When can I have that? Because I'd been so used to having cryo, which took such a long time to thaw, and it seemed to be you'd have to be there for hours. So this new stuff seemed pretty great.
You've said in your statement that it became clearer in 1977 there were risks involved in using factor concentrates. Can you tell us what happened around then?
I believe, yes, it was 77, and a lot of other boys were getting ill with hepatitis. So I was told, so I heard. It seemed like maybe some people didn't come back after the start of term because they were off sick. That's it seemed quite vague somehow. But nothing was said very clear. It would just seem vague and nebulous, this kind of floating around, this hepatitis idea, sometimes referred to as jaundice. And I wasn't really sure, I have to say, what hepatitis was. And was that the same as jaundice? I wasn't very sure. So, yes, I remember it floating around.
And you asked what was happening with these boys who were not coming back at the start of term?
Well, I remember a woman doctor, as far as I recall. I said, "Why are people getting ill?" Which I think was around 78, perhaps. Again, it's very hard to know for sure. She said the product we used came from America. Americans are paid to give blood, so drug users give blood because they need the money. And in this way, our treatment gets contaminated with hepatitis. That's what she said. And I appreciate it, that being told clearly, I appreciated, I think. I don't remember feeling too worried about it somehow. It just seemed to be, I don't know, like just something that was a fact of existence. I don't know.
When that happened in 1977, 1978, did you notice any change in the treatment that you were receiving? Or did it simply carry on?
No, it just carried on. It just carried on. We got tested a lot, blood tests. And you heard terms like Australia antigen and things like this. But again, I have to say, I didn't know what that meant, really. So I just remember that, they've got a fairly frequent blood tests, but treatment as normal.
And if we look at some of your records from 1977, could we have TREL 40276 _006, please, Shumik? Thank you. We can see here in Christmas term of 1977, two entries are recorded, one which is cryobuline and one which is Lister. And then in Easter term 1978, we can see factor 8, cryoprecipitate, Lister, coate and hemophil. Was there any discussion with you about restricting you to certain products?
No, that never came up. You just got what you were given.
And then if we turn to TREL 40276 _036, please. We can see here in 1979, November and December of 1979, that you were given what seems to be two different batches of factor 8. Lister, hemophil, another different batch of factor 8, coate, and then a coate again, one of which appears to be the same batch, another which is a different batch.
Yeah.
And in 1980, in the Easter term, we see a similar variety of products and seemingly different batches of the product.
Could we just go back to the page before?
Of course, at the top of the page.
To the top, where You were saying that the right big toe in the 1st of December 79 was another product. That would be reading the factor 8 494 as different from the factor 8 749 at the top. Do you think that that figure perhaps reflects the number of units?
You're right, sir. The first entry on the 16th of November appears to be 2 different batches, and then the same batch is used, it appears, on the 1st of December 1979.
So the same batch was obviously there for a couple of weeks and just wasn't reused.
Indeed, indeed.
Thank you.
Then if we look at 1980, we see haemophil, Lister, 2 different batches of factor 8. In fact, the 18th of January factor 8 23709 is the same that we saw on the 16th of November. We see a different batch of Lister, and we carry on. The Co8 is the same as before, and some variety on the haemophil batches. But we also see a reference in January 1980 to cryoprecipitate. Do you remember why you were given cryoprecipitate on some occasions?
No, that's mysterious. I don't remember getting cryo at that late. I'm surprised to see that.
And again, in 1980, was there any discussion about giving you particular batches or particular products?
No. It didn't. So it wasn't my concern that it wasn't. They decided what you got, and it wasn't brought up with me. They didn't consult me.
Can we then turn to TREL 40276_191, please? This was in your records. It appears to be a consent form signed by a parent that you would be taking part in a trial as explained by Dr. Arenstam. Do you know anything about this consent form?
Well, if it's from 1980, and I've seen this in my records, then I believe it refers to a trial which seemed to be about how small a dose you could be given. Like I remember I had a series of knee bleeds, and Dr. Arenstam used to say to another doctor, trial, and I'd think inwardly, hell, that means I get a tiny dose, and I'm going to be back here in another 3 days. So my you say 10%, so you get a 10% dose. That was my recollection, and which I felt I hated because I knew it wasn't enough. And I saw in my notes, actually, another doctor wrote, this boy's had 10% doses for this knee, and it isn't enough, and he should not, these small doses are not working. So if it's that, then yes, I do remember that, not very fondly. And I don't remember. What is galling, really, is that my father signed this, apparently, and I don't know, nobody told me anything about it. So I don't know if Dad would have even known what it was. Maybe he just felt, it's a trial, it's going to progress science and knowledge, so he would sign up for that. I can see that. But yes, as I said, not great, because they didn't tell me what it was, not clearly. Anyway,
It's undated, so
yeah.
it's a little unclear about exactly when it was.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of other documents that I want to take you to in relation to trial.
Mm-hmm.
Could we turn to TREL 40276_076, please? And it's page 2, please, Shumik. Thank you. We can see on the entry at the top of the page, 20th of November 1978, just under the table, as it were, the stamped bit, there's in capital.
I think it's 20th of December, isn't it? Because if you look down, sorry, October. Because if you look down, it's the 20th of October.
20th of October, absolutely. 20th of October.
It's not very clear because it looks like an 11, but I think it's a 10.
And the next entry makes it clear that it's the 20th of October. So 20th of October trial, and then again on the 20th of October at 2:10 had a trial dose this morning. And if we carry on to page 4, please, Shumik. 12th of November 1978, next to the stamped table, trial dose grade 2. And then the next page, 22nd of November 1978, again next to the stamped part, trial. And then again, 4th of December 1978, trial. So there are a number of entries in your records of a trial. Were you aware of, you've described one trial that you were conscious of being part of. We're a little unclear what this trial is.
Yes, I noticed this, and I was puzzled by that. I don't know what the trial was. And if I was on one, they didn't tell me what it was.
No, you think you had hepatitis at some point in the 1970s, is that right? You're not very sure.
I'm not sure. No, I'm not. Just occasion. I don't know. Some of the stomach pains, but you could say that was for any number of reasons. So, no, I don't know.
What we have in your records is an entry that you had a serum hepatitis antibody positive test, TREL 40276_042, please, Shumik. And we can see the first entry of a positive antibody test is there on the 22nd of January 1979. Were you ever told at school about this positive test as far as you can remember?
No, I wasn't. They never seemed to tell us the results of these tests. We weren't given any specifics. They may have said you're going to be, they took blood. You knew they were taking blood, and you knew it was going off to be tested. But they didn't tell me about that. No.
From your discussions, do you think your parents were told about it?
No, I asked them recently, actually. I was curious. I asked whether they'd been aware of hepatitis in that period from any source. Haemophilia Society, school, hospitals, and both of them said they had heard nothing from anyone about hepatitis. My mother told me she wasn't aware of any connection with hepatitis until I was treated for it in 2006.
And turning to AIDS, when did you first become aware of AIDS?
AIDS. Well, that was when I was at the sixth form college in Alton. I think I was in the art room, and I heard some other students talking, because some of us went to go to the sixth form college, and we did A levels, off-site in this college. Anyway, I was there. I was doing art A level, and I heard some people talking, some other students, and they said, they're murmuring to them. They weren't talking to me. I just heard them, and it was something about a new disease, that Haiti, haemophiliacs, homosexuals, and I had haemophiliacs, and that was the first I heard of this thing, AIDS. So I'm guessing that was 83. That was maybe May of 83, because there had been a documentary on TV about, which I think was what they were referring to. I think it was maybe an Horizon program, which I did check, when one was broadcast, and it was April 83. An episode of Horizon talked about AIDS. That may have been what they had watched. But anyway, that's when the first I heard was that.
You heard that in the sixth form, the college away
Yes.
from Treloar.
Yes.
When you went back to Treloar's, did you talk to anyone about what had been said?
Well, not immediately. I think I was pondering these things. I was puzzled, confused. I think I first maybe asked a physiotherapist. I don't know if I can name the person, the physiotherapist at the school.
Yes, I think you can.
As I remember, she was called Mrs. Lovering, and I think I talked to her about it. I think I said I'd heard this stuff, and she knew about it as well, and I think she had a bit of a joke. We sort of about, if you're a Haitian, homosexual, haemophiliac, you've got no chance. I think was, a joke kind of that was floating about then. But, that was it. It wasn't, nobody seemed to make a point of telling us anything until, and I don't know when it was, but I remember Dr. Arenstam called all haemophilia boys to the hall, and he sort of made a nice, calm announcement. Yes, there was this thing called AIDS, but don't worry. Only 2 people in the UK with haemophilia have it. So, very small risk. That's, to my best recollection, that's what happened. I don't remember him going into any detail or anything more than that. So I'm guessing that must have been, maybe a short time after the TV program, perhaps. That's how it sort of works in my head. But that's my best recollection.
And at that meeting, was there any information provided to you all about the risks of transmission, as far as they were known, or any hint of what was understood about the transmission of HTLV3?
No, I don't remember. No. Maybe because it was all about, there's no, don't worry, risk is really small, and that's kind of all he said, I think. I don't remember him telling us anything about how it was spread or how you might avoid spreading it or getting it. As such, didn't seem to be any way of avoiding getting it, but almost that wasn't a problem because it was just a really small risk anyway.
And when you heard that, what were your thoughts on what you were being told?
I suppose at first it was kind of phew, that's all right then, kind of, I don't need to worry too much. I just tried to be cool, be calm, and just carry on, I suppose.
And did you talk about it with your fellow pupils, your fellow students?
No, I don't remember talking about it to anybody. No other people. No, I don't think so.
In terms of that knowledge, did it affect how you, what you thought about treatment or how you approached treatment thereafter?
Well, I suppose at first I sort of, tried to say, don't, it's just a small risk, don't worry. But then, you sort of start to get a few niggling doubts, perhaps, and then you start wondering, is this dose going to infect me? And that worry, I suppose, that was sort of slowly built up, perhaps. So, I think I was worried inside, and that was building up, perhaps. Yes.
Could we have a look at TREL 40276_065, please, Shumik? We can see here that at least on one occasion, T-cell ratios were being assessed. Were you aware of that?
No. When was this, sorry?
It's dated, I think, it's a little difficult to see, but it looks to be the 26th of January.
83.
It's difficult to know if it's 83 or 85.
No, I think
83, I think.
There we go.
Because I left the college in July, I think, summer, 83.
80.
No, I didn't know this, and if I'd never heard of T-cell anyway, then I didn't know what that meant.
And also, if we turn to TREL 40276_140, we have a letter from the 28th of June 1983, and it's from Dr. Wasif. But if we go to the last paragraph on the first page, please, Shumik, we see a heading, AIDS-related investigations, which reads, clinically, he exhibits none of the stigmata of AIDS. Examination of his superficial lymph nodes on the 17th of March 83 revealed palpable bilateral tonsillar, left axillary and bilateral shotty inguinal lymph nodes. Then over the page. For your information, we've undertaken the enclosed AIDS-related tests. We are repeating these tests, and when the results are available, we'll forward them to you. I hope he continues to do well. Again, were you aware that AIDS-related investigations were being undertaken?
No. I didn't know there were any tests. Looking at my own notes, it refers to them physically examining lymph nodes and so on, and I vaguely remember that happening once, but it was not very. It was fairly downplayed. It wasn't. There was no highlighting of that, really, that I remember.
As you said, you left Treloar's in 1983.
Yes.
And went on to university.
Yes.
And while you were at university, you were tested for HIV in
Yes.
1985.
Yes.
Before the test was done, what were you told?
Well, you mean when they took the blood
Yep.
test? Well, the nurse there at the Royal Victoria Infirmary said, you will most likely be HIV positive, but, don't worry, it could be a good thing. Maybe you'll be immune or something like this. So, I tried not to worry about it.
You didn't then get the results.
No.
You'd moved elsewhere. And
I was still at the university. I had the blood taken in maybe May or June '85, and then I went home for summer holiday, and you hadn't heard anything, and I was starting to get a little worried. And then the worry, I sort of just built up into a kind of panic till I couldn't take it. I had to know. I wanted to know. And so then I just went to my local hospital, thinking, well, maybe they can tell me. And it was a small centre. I just showed up and I saw a nurse I knew, and I said, look, what's my result, And she said, let me just go and check. And she came back and said, okay, you're negative. And I was, well, thank you. And I was the huge relief was pretty amazing. And I said, well, why didn't anybody tell me? Because I've seemed to be waiting such a long time for that result. But relief, I suppose, on that day.
What did the nurse say about why you hadn't been told earlier?
Oh, she just said we just told the people who are positive. It was what she said.
By the time the hepatitis C test was available, you were in another city.
Yeah.
And what were you told before you were tested for hepatitis C?
Well, I'd say nothing really. Did they even tell me I was going to be tested for it? Perhaps not.
In your statement, you suggested that you were asked during a routine appointment
Yeah.
to be tested.
Okay.
Do you recall anything about that?
No, I don't. It's pretty blasé. I don't remember that detail really. I'm sorry. I don't remember them saying anything much.
You tested positive for
Yes.
hepatitis C.
Yes.
When you were told of your diagnosis, do you recall what else you were told? What were you told about it?
Nothing really. Surprisingly little, I think. And this was in a bigger centre. In Wales. I suppose I had my feeling then that the centre was a bit more kind of distant somehow. They weren't very, what can I say? They didn't tell me much, I suppose. It was more hands off, perhaps.
Do you recall being told anything about the risk of transmission to others?
Not really. I don't believe so. They didn't tell me very much about it there. I think I was told more at the smaller centre where my parents live, where I, in holiday times and so on, I would still go there for treatment appointments. They were probably better, more forthcoming, because I was tested, I think, in 91. I was found to be HCV positive in 91 in Wales, so I wasn't told very much there. And then I learned more from my home centre, as it were, a little bit later than that, about perhaps transmission, possible treatments, which the treatments were going to be very difficult and time-consuming. And I was working abroad. I was getting work in other countries, and they said you're going to have to be here for a year at least, taking ribavirin I can't remember, or just interferon. I think it was in the mid-90s. I think that was available, and it would have taken a year, and it would have been maybe wouldn't even have worked. So I wasn't in a position to have that treatment because I would have lost my work, abroad, and have to been out of that job for too long. I think so. It would have been too difficult to have the treatment anyway.
So at that stage, you declined the treatment.
Yes.
And at that time, what was your physical health like?
Well, it was good. I wasn't getting symptoms. Maybe just a slightly impaired liver function, but because I was pretty well, I was okay. I wanted to just carry on and do my work abroad.
And emotionally, what impact did the infection have on you during those years?
Well, I do remember when not long after I was first tested for hepatitis C, when I was still in Wales, and I did start to sort of talk to somebody about it, who I think was a friendly, he was a kind of a friend, I suppose. I'm not very good at making friends in a way, but, not great, but I thought he was sort of a friend, and I did start to tell him a bit about it because I felt anxious because I was going to try and get teaching jobs, and then I thought sometimes there seemed to be medicals involved, and this might preclude me from employment in schools. But he just didn't want to know, really. He kind of shut me down very quickly, so I kind of just gave up on that, and I didn't really talk to him after that.
You've said just a moment ago that you worked abroad for a number of years.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us anything about the effect that the infection had on your work?
Well, I was quite well, so I was, working normally. I suppose I'd often had tried to get the help of an employer because I couldn't speak the language, and I'd need to go to the hospital to get factor 8, and because I'd just gone to I could only go to a country where treatment was available, and I'd have a letter from the hospital, and I would be reasonably trusting, with the employer, and I would ask them to help me get the treatment. But I'm not sure. Sometimes, you know, I think my first employer, who was in Greece, she was a very kind woman, and she did help me a lot in perhaps making contact with a hospital in Athens. But she didn't employ me again. She said she was too worried, you know, about me, you know, having a haemophilia and so on, and it made her just too anxious, and so she wouldn't hire me again.
And while you were abroad, you received recombinant in about 2001.
I did in Italy. Yes, that was the first. I could have probably had some in France a bit earlier still, because they were very kind and they gave me a load of treatment, although I was leaving France to go to work in Italy. And the French doctor did, I think, offered me recombinant maybe, but as I hadn't had it before, it didn't seem wise, you know, when it was a new treatment, and I said, in England only kids can have recombinant, and she said, oh, how ridiculous! It's £1 difference in price, you know. We have it for everybody here, and you're a young man. That was her comment, as I remember. But anyway, they were very generous, and they gave me a lot of Factor 8 to take to Italy with me.
And when you returned to the UK, your statement tells us you phoned the blood bank in Norwich.
Yes.
Why was that?
Well, I just arrived in Norwich in 2001 with my partner, and so that was the nearest hospital where I would get treatment. It is not a specialist centre, it's not a comprehensive care centre, but it does have treatment. And I phoned the blood bank to ask if I could collect some treatment, and the fellow was, I have to say, pretty hostile to me when I asked, I think, you know, politely, you know, I said, what sort of treatment was it, you know? And it was, why do you want to know? You know, like, who do you think you are? Asking questions like that. You know, I know where you're going with this. And it was very weird, you know. I thought, I have a right to ask a question. But my first interaction with the hospital wasn't great.
In about 2006, you
Yes.
decided to have treatment for your hepatitis
Yes.
C. And you had interferon and ribavirin.
Yes.
What was the effect of the treatment on you?
Oh, well, the first one came like quite a shock. You know, I was given my first ribavirin interferon in the hospital, and then I cycled home, and by the sort of early evening I was feeling, so weird and very sick, you know, which was quite a shock. I mean, I knew it might have been, you know, was going to be a little rough, perhaps, but it hit me quite hard. I think that treatment.
It lasted for 6 months.
Yes.
And what was your state like throughout those 6 months?
Well, it made me feel pretty ill. Yes, I think. and sort of weird and emotional, I think. I don't know if anybody else felt like that, but kind of, I don't know, like sometimes you feel like you were crying over nothing. I mean, I don't know if it's just me or I don't know, but that's how it made me feel anyhow. So pretty weird, pretty ill. My hair fell out, and yes, I think I was doing some voluntary work in a local charity, and I think the guy who knew me there sort of peered at me, said, "You all right?" You know, kind of thing. I must have been looking particularly seedy or something that day. But yeah, so anyway, at least it was shorter. You know, I waited and got the shorter run at that treatment at least, and it did clear the virus.
And have you been left with any ongoing side effects from it?
From that treatment? Not that I know of. I don't think so.
You continue to attend the haemophilia centre at Norwich, but you
Yes.
also go further afield.
I do.
Why do you go to 2 centres now?
Well, that's kind of like a reward or something, you know, because in 2018, I had a very bad bleed in my knee, and Norwich had given me an emergency telephone number for nighttime, out of hours, and I was in a lot of pain. So I've called this emergency number, thinking, well, I'll get some help. But the nurse or whoever it was who picked up the emergency number didn't seem to have been briefed or knew the drill, because she just said, you know, like, well, what do you want? Who are you? I'll just call 111, you know. And I was trying to say, but that's not that, and that was bye. And anyway, I tried 111, and then they just eventually they just sent an ambulance, and the ambulance people were puzzled. They looked at me up and down, and they thought, well, what's wrong with him? You know, he's not got blood coming out, or, you know, they seemed not to understand what haemophilia was or why I was in this pain. But they kind of reluctantly almost took me to A&E, where I thought, okay, good, I'm in A&E now, so okay, I'll get some relief. But just an hour turned to 2 hours to 3, and so on. They just did nothing really. And I think my partner was with me. She was with me all the time, and she was affected as me, really, because she had to go to work the next day. So, but I think we were in A&E from 2 a.m. to 9:30. That was when the day staff came in, so that's when they could see me, 9:30. I think we phoned again. We phoned the emergency number from A&E, and they were still saying, well, can't do anything, our hands are tied. And all they had to do, what they should have done, is called the duty haematologist, who could have seen me in minutes, got me the pain relief, and that, you know, would have been that. If I'd known it was going to be like that, I would never have called. I could have stayed at home and suffered, you know, at least it'd be a little more comfortable.
And I think you wanted to explain that because you
and then the sort of next day or couple of days, my partner and I saw the haematologist there in Norwich, and he was apologetic. He said it shouldn't have happened. Use the magic words next time. Say, call the duty haematologist. That's what I should have said. I didn't know those magic words. But he said he was sorry about that, and he said, I'll refer you to Adam Brooks. Because I had been concerned about the level of kind of treatment that I had been getting in Norwich, because there was no physio, no hydro, or only very, very limited. I think I did see a physio there once, but she sort of said, I don't really want to have any, I don't know anything about haemophilia. So she just kind of wanted to back off, really.
And in terms of financial assistance, you've received payments from the Skipton Fund and subsequently the EIBSS.
That's correct. I got the ex gratia payment.
But you say you've got no real recollection of applying for the...
No, that seemed to just come out of the blue, really. Yes, that I thought, oh, okay, money from the sky almost. It just seemed, it was very strange how that worked. Yes.
And you've also said in your statement that if you'd not been contacted by them,
yeah,
and if you'd looked on the EIBSS website,
that's right,
you'd have thought you weren't eligible.
That is right. Yes.
Why is that?
As I recall, the wording on the EIBSS website says if you have received an ex gratia payment, you're not eligible for this money we now get. That's my recollection of the word. I did mention that. I think I mentioned it to somebody in the Haemophilia Society, somebody in Cambridge also, this strange wording. So yes, reading that, I would never apply, thinking I can't get that.
There was something on the website
Yes.
that you read that you thought,
Yes.
this takes me out of the...
Yes, it seems to mean I am ineligible for that money.
So those are the questions I have for Mr. B.A. If I may, I'll just turn and check whether his representative has anything. She doesn't have anything further.
Just one question. You've been, I gather, to quite a number of different countries. I don't want you to list them.
No.
Any more than you already have done.
Right.
But just putting them together as best you can.
Mm.
How does that make you reflect upon the treatment that you have had as a hepatitis C sufferer in the UK?
Well, when I went to Greece, that was 93, and they were very good. They used to send me treatment from Athens. I lived in the north of the country, and they sent it up to me in a van, and they were really great. And I think it was a German product that I got in Greece. So I suppose thinking about that is I wonder why the UK was so reliant on American product when other countries, Germany, Spain, perhaps France as well, made factor as well also. Why didn't we get that? Wouldn't that be better than American? I think, is that what you mean?
No, I'm just asking a very general question to get a general reaction. You've given me one.
And the other thing is the availability of recombinant treatment earlier than was available here. France and Italy gave their haemophilia patients recombinant much earlier than we did. So we seem to always want to avoid cost, perhaps, in this country, whereas others maybe are perhaps more generous and take a longer term view.
Can I just explore a little what you mean by your sense that people here were concerned about the cost, where others took a longer term view? What gave you the impression that people were concerned about the cost here?
Well, in this country, recombinant at first was only given to young children. That's about 2000, I believe. Whereas in Italy and France, it was available for all. So in that way, it seems that the Italian system, the French system, was better than ours. And it need not be. Why shouldn't we have just as good treatment as other countries?
I understand that. It was your link to cost. Is this an assumption on your part, or has somebody said something to you?
Well, I know that this country wouldn't give recombinant factor to adults. I know that. And I know that my partner went to Norwich Hospital to get treatment for me, and somebody made a point of saying to her, "Do you know how much this treatment costs?"
So that was what made you think of the cost, I see.
Yes.
And the longer term view, what did you mean by that?
Well, perhaps the other countries take a longer term view of safety. Perhaps they gave recombinant treatment because it's the safest treatment for all, and we were not willing to invest in a safer treatment when we could have. That is, in the early 80s, the bioproducts laboratory could have been expanded, could have been invested in, and we all could have received British factor, which was considerably safer than the US product that we bought in.
Thank you very much. That's all that I ask.
Thank you. Mr. BA, is there anything you'd like to add?
I can't. I listened to Gary this morning, and his statement was so powerful. I can't add anything, and I feel anyway that I'm so fortunate because I was so lightly affected by this, and Gary was so deeply affected. And you said that you felt guilty. I can't believe that. I'm stunned. You don't have anything to feel guilty. I mean, I feel guilty. I feel like a fake. I'm very well. I was so unaffected in comparison with you. And I respect your strength so much. And I know you. We shared a room. And all I have to say is, why didn't you get a girl for me? Thank you to this inquiry. Thank you, Sir Brian.
Well, you may be a fake, but I don't believe it for a moment. Thank you very much. Your last exchange with Gary is not the only exchange there's been. When you were discussing how you felt when you first had your treatment, he was nodding when you said, "I don't know if anyone else feels like that," and he was doing it again. But your last comment about the girl just shows the sense and strength of the humorous bond, the bond that there is, plainly, between those who went to Treloar's. And that little insight is worth a lot. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sir Brian.
Mr. BA, you can just stay there.
You mustn't spoil her moment in telling us what we're in for tomorrow.
Oh.
No, I'm very conscious that the camera is staying on me until we finish today. Tomorrow we'll be hearing from Nicholas Sainsbury. He will be giving evidence remotely. John Peach, who will be giving evidence in person, and Mr. B.C., who will be giving evidence in person.
Thank you. So that's tomorrow, 10 o'clock, if you please.
Sorry, yes.
Thank you.
It is.